The sirens wail long before the smoke clears. In the early morning haze of Riverbend, a two-story house burns from the inside out, windows shattered, rooftop blackened, the front lawn soaked with frantic footsteps and the sound of panic. Neighbors crowd the sidewalk, phones pointed, voices overlapping, none of them noticing the man standing completely still near the fire truck. His name is Darnell Carter. He's barefoot, shirt damp with soot and sweat. His hands shake, not from fear but from adrenaline wearing off. Minutes earlier, he'd pulled 3 people from that house, 2 children and their grandmother, dragging them through flame, coughing through smoke, kicking the back door down when it wouldn't budge. But no one's asking how they got out. They're too focused on what a uniformed officer is doing now. Officer Bryce Halton steps forward, face stiff under his badge. He doesn't speak at first. He just stares at Darnell, then glances at the house again, then back at Darnell's hands, still blackened, trembling, open. "You live here?" Halton asks finally. "No," Darnell answers. "They do. I was driving by. I saw the flames. You just happened to be here?" Halton presses, his voice tightening. "I stopped to help." Halton doesn't nod, doesn't thank him. Instead, he steps closer and narrows his gaze. The moment twists. The firefighter walking past pauses mid-step. Even the crowd shifts. They've seen this before, not the fire. The doubt, the default suspicion. Darnell doesn't flinch, but inside his chest burns more than his lungs. A second officer walks over, whispering something to Halton. Darnell hears fragments. "Gas can in the alley, ignition point." Then he watches Halton's expression change, not to concern, but to satisfaction. "You're under suspicion of arson," Halton says, loud, firm, deliberate. The words land like stones. The crowd reacts instantly. "You gotta be kidding," someone mutters. "He just saved them. He's a hero." Halton ignores it all. He steps toward Darnell and reaches for his cuffs. And then, from the still smoking house, a voice cuts through the noise. "Wait!" It's a teenage boy coughing into a blanket, being supported by a paramedic. He points at Darnell. "He pulled us out. He broke the door down." Halton pauses, only for a second. Then he says, "We'll sort that out at the station." He snaps the cuffs shut around Darnell's wrists. Phones come up. Someone yells, "This is wrong." The grandmother, now seated near an ambulance with oxygen pressed to her face, lifts her hand weakly and whispers, "That man, he saved my babies." But Halton keeps walking. Darnell doesn't resist. He just stares ahead as the cameras record, the crowd shouts, and the sirens start up again. This time taking the wrong person away. Across the street, one man in a gray hoodie stands quietly recording everything. He doesn't speak, but he will. Soon. In the back seat of the patrol car, Darnell sits motionless. The windows are rolled down halfway, but the air feels thicker here than it did inside the burning house. His wrists sting from the cuffs, his shirt clings to his back, his thoughts burn hotter than the fire he ran into. Halton hasn't said a word since the arrest. He types into his onboard system, glancing at the screen, then at Darnell, then back again, like he's trying to make the facts fit a story he already believes. Outside, a small group of neighbors remains behind the tape, whispering, filming, refusing to leave. The smoke in the air has thinned, but the tension hasn't. Among them, the man in the gray hoodie finally lowers his phone. His name is Marcus Taylor, a rideshare driver who had just dropped someone off nearby when the flames appeared. He never stopped filming. Not when Darnell broke the back gate down, not when the kids were carried out coughing, not when the cuffs clicked. And now, he's uploading it. By the time Halton pulls into the station lot, the video is already live. He saved a family, and got arrested for it. 3 minutes. Uncut. No edits. Just truth. Within the hour, it reaches 50,000 views. Inside the station, Halton walks Darnell through booking. Still no questions. Still no paperwork produced. The arrest seems rushed, manufactured even, but he proceeds like he's done it 1,000 times. "Name?" the desk officer asks, not looking up. Halton answers for him. "Darnell Carter, suspected arson, obstructing first responders." Darnell raises an eyebrow. "Obstructing?" "You entered a crime scene, interfered with emergency services," Halton says coldly. "I was the emergency service," Darnell replies, voice low. The officer at the desk finally looks up. Something shifts in his expression. "Wait, this is the guy from the fire?" Halton's jaw tightens. Protocol. But it's already unraveling. Across town, Marcus's video is shared by a local journalist with the caption, "Racial profiling or real investigation? This man saved lives, then got cuffed." Thousands of comments pour in, screenshots spread to Reddit, TikTok, even a local news anchor's feed. By noon, the clip has hit 500,000 views, and rising. At 1:45 p.m., Officer Halton is pulled into a private room. Two internal affairs investigators are waiting. "We need to talk about the arrest," one of them says. Halton's confident demeanor cracks just a little. Back in holding, Darnell sits on a bench staring at a crack in the wall. He's not angry, not even surprised, just tired. He's been here before, not the cell but the assumption that a black man at the scene must have caused it, not helped it. That guilt walks in his skin. But this time, someone saw everything. He hears a buzz from beyond the locked doors, then footsteps, then keys. A young officer opens the cell. "You're being released, sir." Darnell blinks. "What?" "No charges, you're free to go." Outside the station, the crowd is waiting. Marcus is among them, holding his phone again, not recording, just watching. When Darnell steps through the door, a small cheer rises. Someone claps. Someone yells, "Justice!" Darnell doesn't smile. He just nods. Not because he feels vindicated, but because this time, the lie didn't stick. And someone, a stranger in a gray hoodie, made sure the story couldn't be rewritten. The crowd outside the station doesn't leave right away. They linger. Some with signs hastily written on scraps of cardboard. Others just watching, silent, arms crossed. It's not a protest. Not yet. But it's no longer just a reaction. It's a reckoning waiting to happen. Darnell steps off the last concrete stair and stands there, blinking in the afternoon light. Someone hands him a bottle of water. Another person asks for his name. A woman pushes through the group and gently says, "My brother's one of the firefighters who showed up. He said you saved those kids." He nods once. That's all he can give right now. Marcus approaches, phone lowered, hoodie pulled back. His voice is soft, unsure. "I was the one filming," he says. "I figured," Darnell replies. "Thank you. I knew what they'd try to say." "Yeah," Darnell says, almost smiling. "So did I." By the time he gets home, the video has passed 2 million views. He doesn't watch it, he lived it. But his phone buzzes constantly. Messages from strangers, reporters, even a few old friends he hadn't heard from in years. Some send prayers, others send apologies. One message simply reads, "You were never supposed to be the suspect." At 4:20 p.m., a local journalist knocks on his apartment door. She introduces herself politely, says she's not here to exploit, just to understand. "I want to tell your story," she says. "In your words." Darnell thinks for a moment, then says, "Only if it includes theirs too." "Theirs?" "The family, the kids, that grandmother. They're the only reason I ran toward the fire." She nods. They sit. He speaks. He tells her how he'd just gotten off a double shift at the mechanic shop, how he saw smoke blocks away, how instinct didn't give him time to question it, how his own childhood made him run faster, too many nights where no one showed up when danger came. By 6 p.m., the article is drafted. Its headline reads, "He was called an arsonist. He was actually a hero." It's published an hour later. By 8 p.m., national media picks it up, and Officer Halton sees it. In his small office, surrounded by silence, Halton refreshes the article twice. He reads the paragraph about the teenage boy, the one who said, "That man saved us." He sees his own name next to the words profiling, rush to judgment, and internal investigation. His phone buzzes with a message from his union rep. "We need to talk, now." But Halton doesn't reply. At that same moment, Darnell receives a call from someone he doesn't expect. It's the grandmother. Her voice raspy but strong. "They told me what you did," she says. "You didn't just save my babies. You saved me too." Darnell's throat tightens. He doesn't speak, just listens. "Whatever they tried to say about you," she continues, "the truth already beat them." He exhales, and for the first time that day lets himself breathe. The next morning arrives with headlines louder than sirens. Darnell's face appears across local broadcasts, side by side with the words, "wrongfully accused." Social media carries it further. People now know his name, not just as a suspect, but as a man who ran into fire while others filmed from sidewalks. By 7:15 a.m., news vans line the street outside his apartment. Some reporters knock politely. Others just wait, hoping for a comment, a pose, a soundbite. He doesn't give them one. Instead, he grabs a hoodie and heads to the one place no one expects, the burned house. When he arrives, the yellow tape still flutters across the front gate. The building is scarred but standing. The front window is boarded, and blackened streaks crawl up the brick. But the sidewalk is clean. Someone swept it. A soft voice breaks the silence. "You came back." It's the teenager, the boy he pulled through the smoke. His name is Aaron, and he stands with his younger sister, both holding styrofoam cups of cocoa. "We heard you got arrested," Aaron says. "Yeah," Darnell replies. "Didn't last. My grandma said that's how it goes. People like us, they look for the wrong in us first." Darnell crouches, meets his eyes. "She also say you were brave?" Aaron nods slowly. "She said you were the reason we're still here." Darnell glances at the charred roof. "Tell her I'm glad I was close." They don't stay long, but before they leave, Aaron presses something into Darnell's hand. A wrinkled photo, slightly smoke-damaged. It shows the boy with his sister and grandmother, smiling on the front steps weeks earlier. "I want you to have this," Aaron says. Darnell tucks it carefully into his coat pocket. At 10:30 a.m., a press conference begins at police headquarters. The city is watching. Officer Halton stands off to the side, face unreadable, arms crossed. At the podium, the police chief chooses her words carefully. "We are reviewing the arrest made at the Riverbend fire. Based on witness testimony, video evidence, and internal review, we acknowledge that Mr. Darnell Carter should never have been detained. No apology, just acknowledgement." Reporters shout questions. Will Officer Halton face consequences? Was this racial profiling? What changes will be made? The chief answers only one. "We are initiating mandatory bias and procedure retraining for all active officers." Halton doesn't speak, but he hears it. So does everyone else. By noon, another video surfaces, this time from a firefighter's helmet cam. It captures the moment Darnell kicks open the back door and pulls Aaron's sister out, coughing, limp, but alive. The footage spreads like wildfire. By 3 p.m., national news runs a new headline. From accused to hero, Darnell Carter's story unfolds. People begin organizing. A local councilman calls for Halton's suspension. A petition launches online demanding broader reform. In less than 3 hours, it has 50,000 signatures. But Darnell doesn't log in to check any of it. He's at the community center, helping stack boxes of clothes and supplies for families displaced by recent fires. No cameras, no quotes, just action. At 4:45 p.m., Marcus shows up. "You could be on TV right now," he says. "I know," Darnell replies. Marcus chuckles. "You always this quiet?" Darnell shrugs. "I just believe the right noise is action." They work side by side, folding jackets, packing hygiene kits. No interviews, no hashtags. Just two men, refusing to let one headline define what comes next. The sun sets early this time of year, casting long shadows across Riverbend. But for once, those shadows don't hide the truth. They spotlight it. Through every shared post, every re-aired video, every conversation now circling around the same name, Darnell Carter. By 6:30 p.m., the city council chambers are filled to capacity. What was originally scheduled as a budget review has shifted into an open forum. Community members flood the room, not with rage, but with purpose. A woman takes the mic. She's a local teacher. "3 of my students watched that video," she says, "and all 3 asked me the same thing. Would that have happened to me?" The room goes quiet. Another man stands, a retired paramedic. "We teach our kids to run toward people in need. But what's the lesson if they watch a man do exactly that and end up in handcuffs?" The council takes notes. One official nods. Another shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Outside, more people gather. Some hold signs. Not angry slogans, just facts. "He saved them. He got cuffed. We see you, Darnell." At the center of it all, Darnell doesn't speak. He's not at the chamber. He's not in front of cameras. He's walking the aisles of a quiet hardware store. With his own money, he buys gloves, nails, plywood, and paint. Not for protest, for purpose. At 7:45 p.m., he returns to the burned house, alone. The city has left it boarded and vacant, but Darnell sees what no one else has time for. A structure still standing, a roof that didn't fall, a family that still needs somewhere to return to. He starts by hammering loose siding back into place. Then he boards the broken window more securely. He paints over the scorched trim, not to erase it but to protect it. As he works, headlights approach. It's Marcus. "You always rebuild what you didn't break?" he asks. Darnell wipes sweat from his brow. "Someone has to." Marcus sets down a case of bottled water. No words, just help. By 9 p.m., the sidewalk is lit by a single battery-powered lantern. The neighborhood is quiet now, not from fear but from watching. People begin showing up. An older man offers to fix the fence. A teenager brings paint rollers. A mother hands over fresh cookies, says, "This is the least I can do." No one organizes it. It just happens. Because truth doesn't need a headline to multiply. At 10:15 p.m., a reporter drives by, slows, lowers her window. "You're not doing this for the camera, are you?" she asks. Darnell glances at her, then at the house, then back. "I'm doing it because they lived," he says. "And this house should too." She doesn't ask another question, just writes it down. The next morning, a light rain falls over Riverbend. It taps against windows, smooths the ash-streaked sidewalks, and turns the edges of protest signs soggy. But it doesn't wash anything away, especially not what happened, especially not the names now circulating like pulse beats. Darnell Carter has become more than a man. He's become a mirror. By 7 a.m., the repair site outside the burned home looks different. What started with one man and a hammer has become a quiet crew. Some wear work gloves, some carry coffee. All of them wear the same look, the kind that says, "We saw, we know, we won't forget." Darnell works without directing anyone. He patches a corner of the roof with the help of a retired roofer who says nothing the whole time, just nods, points, hands him the right nails. Someone sets up a table nearby with snacks and coffee. Marcus, now a quiet fixture, takes pictures, not to post, just to document. At 8:10 a.m., a city inspector arrives. She doesn't say much, walks the property, scribbles a few notes, then stands with Darnell under the awning. "Didn't think anyone would bother," she admits. "We don't wait anymore," he says. She tears off a carbon copy of her form, hands it to him. "You're cleared for phase 1. Just be careful." There are still people who don't like seeing stories rewritten. Darnell folds the paper and slips it in his jacket. At 9:30 a.m., in a separate part of town, Officer Bryce Halton sits in a disciplinary hearing. The walls are beige, the coffee stale, the language bureaucratic. A lawyer speaks on his behalf, citing stressful conditions, reasonable suspicion, and a need for departmental review of procedures. But no one believes it. Not after the footage, not after the helmet cam, not after the grandmother's statement was aired live the night before. "He saved my family. I don't care what he looks like. I know what he did." Halton avoids eye contact with the panel. For the first time in years, he has no script. At 10:45 a.m., the council chambers receive over 5,000 written public comments, most short, direct, and furious. A selection is read aloud. "Firefighters are heroes. He was faster than them. That cop didn't make a mistake. He followed a pattern. We don't want bias training, we want bias consequences." Meanwhile, Darnell keeps working. He patches, sands, hauls debris. No one tells him what to do. They follow his pace, his silence, his directionless leadership. It's not an effort led by speeches. It's led by gravity, by the certainty that something wrong happened, and someone did something right when no one else moved. At 1 p.m., a reporter approaches him again. "There's talk of a city medal. They might name a day after you." Darnell looks at the half-repaired doorway, then back. "I don't need a day," he says. "They do." He points to the family. They've returned. The grandmother, her walker steady on the new concrete slab. Aaron holding a box of tools. His little sister hugging a teddy bear someone dropped off the night before. They don't say much, but they're smiling now. At 3:15 p.m., someone adds a small framed photo beside the mailbox. It's Darnell, mid-motion, carrying Aaron from the smoke, caught by a phone camera. Beneath it, someone's written, "Not a suspect, not a victim, just someone who refused to walk away." Darnell tries to take it down. The grandmother stops him. "This is your house now too," she says. He lets it stay. The morning after the city inspector approves Phase 1 repairs, a rare calm settles over the Riverbend block. The media trucks have thinned. The cameras are fewer. The outrage online is still active, but the noise has begun to fade. Not because the story is over, but because the world is already looking for its next headline. Darnell knows this part well. The cycle. First, they call you a suspect, then a hero, then something else. But what matters hasn't changed. At 6:50 a.m., he's already on the roof, hammering down the last sheet of plywood. The sky is overcast but dry. Below, Marcus hands up nails without a word. The other volunteers come later now, after school drop-offs, after overnight shifts, after waiting to see if the crowd is still needed. Turns out they are. By 8:15 a.m., the siding is nearly finished. The boards don't match. Some are second-hand. Others came from neighbors' garages. But together, they hold. Stronger than the ones before. Darnell doesn't speak much while he works. But his actions keep pulling people in. One at a time. A city parks employee brings a few potted plants. "For the porch," she says shyly. A former fire chief stops by with a donation envelope. "We failed you," he mutters. But not this time. Darnell just nods, says thank you, and returns to his work. At 10:30 a.m., Officer Halton receives official notice of his administrative leave. The hearing board cites failure to follow updated field protocol, inappropriate escalation, and unsubstantiated cause for detainment. The decision is unanimous. There will be no appeal. He reads the letter twice, then places it in a drawer he doesn't lock. Because for the first time in his career, he knows how it feels to be seen. Fully, completely, and not in the way he expected. By noon, Darnell sits on the rebuilt front steps. He sips water from a bottle someone left with his name scribbled on the side. It's quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that used to feel dangerous. But not now. Now the quiet feels earned. Across the street, Marcus reviews the photos he's taken since the fire. All raw, unedited. No filters. Just truth. He stops at one. It shows Darnell on the ladder, arms outstretched, a hammer in one hand and sunlight behind his back. Not posing. Not aware. Just moving forward. At 1:40 p.m., the city council reaches out to Darnell again. This time, not with a medal or plaque, but with a request. They want him to speak at a youth leadership forum next week. Talk about what it means to do the right thing even when the system does the wrong one. He doesn't say yes right away. Instead, he visits the community center. He watches a group of kids play basketball, laugh, shout, trip, get back up. One of them sees him and runs over. "You're the guy who saved that house, right?" Darnell smiles. "I guess so." "Can I shake your hand?" the kid asks. He does. The boy runs back to his game. Doesn't ask for a selfie, doesn't say you're famous, just wanted to say thanks. At 3:30 p.m., Darnell finally responds to the council's request. "I'll come," he writes, "but not to talk about me. I'll talk about the family, the fire, and the first people who spoke up when I couldn't." He hits send, then goes back outside where Marcus is planting the new flowers. "They'll probably forget me again in a week," Darnell says. Marcus shrugs. "Let them forget. The house remembers." It's Thursday morning when Darnell steps back from the porch and finally looks at the house in full. 2 weeks ago, it was collapsing in on itself. Charred, empty, a hushed reminder of what almost happened. Now, the structure stands repainted, secured, and halfway full of donated furniture from churches, schools, and strangers with pickup trucks. It's not finished. But it's home again. By 7:30 a.m., Aaron and his sister arrive with their grandmother. She holds the new key in her hand like it's something holy. She turns it in the lock. It works on the first try. Darnell watches from the sidewalk as they step inside. No ceremony, no speeches, just quiet joy. And that's enough. At 8:20 a.m., a city staff member arrives with an official envelope. Inside, a proclamation signed by the mayor declaring Darnell Carter Community Honor Day. A public event is scheduled. Photos, press, speeches. Darnell doesn't react. He walks the envelope inside, places it on the table, and tells the grandmother, "It's your house. You hang it if you want." She places it in a drawer. By 9:15 a.m., Marcus brings coffee and prints out the final image he took, the one of Darnell on the ladder. He's added one caption in clean, bold font. He didn't ask for credit, he asked for change. The photo circulates around the city by noon. It reaches schools, council members, and even lands in a printed Sunday paper. An art teacher at a local high school plans to project it during their civil service class. A 5th grade class writes thank you notes and leaves them on the rebuilt porch in a box labeled, "For Mr. Darnell." But fame still doesn't sit right with him. At 1:05 p.m., he walks alone toward the courthouse. Today's his scheduled talk at the Youth Leadership Forum, the one the city insisted he speak at. He wears no suit, no lapel pin, just the same gray hoodie, cleaned and pressed. Inside the courtroom-turned-forum, about 50 teenagers sit in the gallery seats. They watch as he approaches the podium. He doesn't read from a page, doesn't open with a joke. He just begins. "I didn't grow up trying to be anyone's hero," he says. "I wasn't trying to make the news. I saw a house burning and I ran toward it." He pauses. That should have been enough. The room holds its breath. But afterward, someone decided I looked like the problem. And if no one had been filming, maybe I'd still be in a cell. Heads nod. Phones record. I'm not here because I'm special. I'm here because someone hit record. Because someone spoke up. Because the right person said, "I saw what you did. That's the lesson." He leans forward. "You want to be leaders? Don't just do the right thing. Watch for who gets punished for doing it. And when you see it, speak." There's no applause. Not yet. Only silence. And then slowly, hands rise. Students begin asking questions, not about fame or fear, but about responsibility, systems, courage. The conversation lasts longer than scheduled. At 3:45 p.m., Darnell exits through the courthouse side door. Marcus is waiting outside, holding 2 sodas. "You're more patient than I am," he says. Darnell smirks. "I just took longer to speak." They sit on the courthouse steps. For the first time, Darnell lets himself feel it. Not attention, not victory, just peace. He looks up at the sky, still gray, still heavy, but no smoke. Not this time. Friday starts with rain again. Not hard, but steady, soaking the sidewalks, darkening the bricks of the rebuilt home on the corner of Riverbend. Inside, the family Darnell saved begins their first full morning back in the house. The grandmother makes oatmeal. The kids argue over cereal. It sounds like 100 other homes. It sounds like life. Darnell doesn't show up this morning. He figures they deserve the house without him on the porch. Instead, he walks to the corner store, buys batteries and a cheap radio. He needs something simple, something that doesn't buzz with headlines or hashtags. The clerk behind the counter smiles as he rings it up. "You're that guy," he says. Darnell sighs but nods. "My nephew said he wants to be like you, not a firefighter, not a cop, just someone who runs the right direction." Darnell thanks him and walks out, radio under arm. Meanwhile, at the city administration building, Councilmember Rivera reviews a printed petition. Over 120,000 signatures. Digital ink demanding full policy change, not just on arrests, but on how officers are evaluated when force is used. Attached to the petition is Darnell's photo. The caption again, "He didn't ask for credit, he asked for change." At 10:15 a.m., Rivera introduces a motion, a new citizen oversight committee with full access to department footage, arrest logs, and public complaint records. She titles it the Carter Transparency Act. The room reacts, some whisper, some roll eyes, but no one argues the name. By noon, the motion trends citywide. It doesn't pass yet, but it's louder than expected. Back in Riverbend, Marcus knocks on Darnell's door holding a USB drive. "I stitched the footage together," he says. "Everything, from the fire, the arrest, the rebuild." Darnell hesitates. Marcus adds, "No voiceover, no edits, just real time." They sit together at the kitchen table. Darnell plugs in the drive. The footage plays silently, first shaky phone video, then helmet cam, then snippets of the courthouse forum. One continuous thread of what happened. No drama added, none needed. At the end, a single frame holds. Darnell, standing beside the family, smiling, unaware. Marcus asks, "You want me to release it?" Darnell thinks for a long time, then says, Wait for what? For the vote." At 3:30 p.m., a school librarian from the East Side prints the speech Darnell gave at the youth forum. She reads it aloud during afternoon announcements. One sentence echoes down the hallway speakers. "Don't just do the right thing, hamishful. Protect the people who do." Teachers pause, students look up, and somewhere, a conversation starts that wasn't on the lesson plan. At 5 p.m., Darnell walks alone past the now quiet corner where it all began. The scorch marks on the sidewalk are gone, repainted, covered, but in his mind, they still burn. He stops, looks across the street. A woman walks by and nods at him. No words, just recognition. He nods back and keeps walking. It's Monday morning when the vote happens. The council chamber fills early, not just with officials and press, but with citizens who now know exactly why they're here. No suits, no rehearsed speeches, just people holding coffee cups and folded printouts of the Carter Transparency Act. At 8:55 a.m., Councilmember Rivera takes her seat. Her staff slides her the final tally of community submissions. 142,000 names, digital petitions, written letters, voicemails, all calling for the same thing. Not a statue, not a parade, just a system that doesn't need to go viral to be fair. At 9:01 a.m., the meeting begins. Darnell doesn't attend. He's back at work, under a car hood at the local mechanics shop, grease under his nails, sweat on his forehead. The shop's owner, a broad man named Elijah, keeps a small radio on the counter. The vote airs live. Inside the chamber, council members speak their final remarks. One tries to reduce the conversation to emotional response. Another says the act is a long overdue structural necessity. And then, the votes are cast. 5 for, 2 against. It passes. By 9:36 a.m., Riverbend officially creates its first ever independent civil oversight panel. Within the hour, national outlets report the news. Most use the same headline, named for the man who didn't want his name used. Back at the shop, Elijah taps the volume knob. "You hearing this?" he says. Darnell nods, tight-lipped as he tightens a bolt. Elijah shakes his head. "Man saves lives, gets cuffed, then they name a law after him. You must be made of something different." Darnell wipes his hands with a towel. "I'm just tired of watching everything stay the same," he says. Elijah doesn't reply. He doesn't have to. At 11 a.m., Marcus uploads the full video archive. No hashtags, no edits. Just the title, From Smoke to Silence, the real-time record. It spreads faster than he expects. By noon, university professors request permission to use it in ethics courses. City workers ask for access in training sessions, and one school principal reaches out saying, "We want our students to learn from this, not as a tragedy, but as a turning point." That afternoon, the grandmother watches the video from her couch. She doesn't blink once. When it ends, she gets up, walks to the kitchen, and removes the framed proclamation from the drawer. She hangs it beside the front door. Then she adds another frame. Inside it, a printout of a child's handwriting. "Thank you for being brave even when they weren't." At 2:45 p.m., Darnell finally walks past the council building. Not to enter, just passing through. On the sidewalk, someone's drawn a white chalk square with a message inside. This space was built by truth. He doesn't stop, but he looks down and nods once. At 4 p.m., Rivera's assistant sends Darnell a message. "The act passed. I know you didn't want it named after you, but we couldn't think of anything more honest." He doesn't reply, but he saves the message. That night, Marcus knocks on his door again. "This next part's yours," he says. "You get to decide how it ends." Darnell looks out over the quiet block. The porch light of the rebuilt house flickers on. Kids ride bikes down the street again. The fire is memory now, but the change is present. "I don't want to end it," he says. "I want it to keep going." Marcus grins. "Then we tell it slow, and we tell it true." Tuesday begins with fog rolling through Riverbend. Soft, slow, and quiet. It wraps itself around the homes like memory, like smoke that never quite left. But inside the rebuilt house on the corner, the air is different now. Lighter. The kids get ready for school. Backpacks zip, shoes thud against the floor. The grandmother stands by the door, waiting to hand them lunch bags. Her house is still not perfect. Some cracks remain hidden behind new paint, but it stands, strong, lived in, safe. At 7:15 a.m., Darnell walks by, coffee in hand. He doesn't knock, doesn't wave. But the boy, Aaron, sees him through the window and gives him a subtle nod. Darnell returns it. That's all either of them needs. Across town, Marcus sits in a public library, watching the video stats climb past 5 million. But that number means less to him than the messages flooding the comments. "We used this footage in our department briefing today. My students cried, then they wrote essays. We're building our own oversight board, modeled after yours." He closes the tab. Some stories don't need a sequel. At 9 a.m., the first official meeting of the Riverbend Civilian Oversight Panel begins. No podiums, no uniforms. Just a group of 9 volunteers, legal aides, former public servants, and one teacher, seated in a semicircle. They hold printed copies of recent arrest reports marked with yellow highlighter and blue pen. They don't discuss Darnell's case directly. They don't have to. It's the reason they exist. At 10:20 a.m., Councilmember Rivera enters the room briefly and sets a small wooden plaque on the center table. It reads, "Justice without visibility is silence." The room claps once, then gets to work. Meanwhile, Darnell walks back to the mechanic shop. He takes the long route this time, past the courthouse, the community center, even the alleyway where he once parked during the fire. He slows near the back fence where Halton's voice first turned him from a rescuer into a suspect. The alley looks smaller now. He keeps walking. At the shop, Elijah greets him with a grin and a clipboard. "We got a busted alternator and a customer who swears it's the transmission." Darnell chuckles. "Let's teach him gently." They work through the morning, hands dirty, music low. Nothing special. And yet everything is different. At 12:30 p.m., a teenager walks into the shop holding a phone. "You Mr. Darnell?" he asks. Darnell wipes his hands. "Depends who's asking." "I'm with the school paper," the boy says. "Can I interview you for our civics project?" Darnell pauses, then nods toward a bench by the back wall. "You've got 5 minutes," he says. The boy's questions are careful, not about the fire or the cop or the vote, but about how to stay steady when things shake. Darnell doesn't talk long, just enough. When it's over, the teen shakes his hand. "Thanks, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into this stuff before, but I do now." At 2:00 p.m., the grandmother texts Darnell a photo. Her grandkids doing homework at the kitchen table. The caption reads, "We made it." He stares at the message longer than expected, then smiles. At 3:45 p.m., he helps Marcus carry more food donations into the community fridge, a simple wooden cabinet outside the center that neighbors keep stocked. A woman drops off apples. A boy adds water bottles. No ceremony, just care. Darnell closes the fridge door gently. "It's the small stuff," he says. Marcus nods. It always was. Wednesday begins not with headlines or hashtags, but with a knock at Darnell's shop door. It's early. Too early for customers. Elijah is still inside making coffee, so Darnell opens it himself. Standing there is a man in plain clothes, holding a small folder and wearing the kind of face that looks like it's rehearsed this moment a dozen times. "Mr. Carter," he says, "I'm with the Department of Justice. Mind if I come in for a minute?" Darnell doesn't flinch. "You can say what you need from right there." The man nods, respectful. "We're opening a broader investigation into use of force patterns across several precincts, including this one. Your case. It helped light that fuse." He extends the folder forward. Inside is a copy of the complaint Darnell never filed, the one that would have been buried, ignored, or twisted months ago. Now it's evidence. Now it matters. "I didn't submit that," Darnell says. "No," the man replies, "but the city did." The agent thanks him for his time and leaves. No cameras, no big moment, just paperwork and accountability. The slow language of systems finally moving. By 8:45 a.m., Marcus meets Darnell on the corner outside the coffee shop. "You get that visit too?" he asks. Darnell raises an eyebrow. "You?" Marcus pulls out his phone, shows a missed call. "They're asking about the video chain, how early I started recording, who knew what, when." It's real now. Darnell sips his coffee. It was always real. Across the street, kids in school uniforms file into the building. One of them runs back out and waves at Darnell. "Your speech is pinned to our class board," he shouts, then runs back inside. Marcus chuckles. "You're a civic icon." "I'm a tired mechanic," Darnell mutters, but there's a small smile hiding under the rim of his cup. By 10:30 a.m., the Oversight Board releases its first public bulletin. It doesn't name officers, it doesn't accuse, but it details patterns, where complaints rise, where body cam footage disappears, where discipline is inconsistent. The city reads it. Some flinch. Others nod. Halton reads it too, alone, from his kitchen, where the badge he no longer wears still sits in a drawer. At 12:00 p.m., the community center hosts a free clinic for renters' rights. Darnell volunteers to move chairs. A woman asks if he's in charge. "No," he says. "I just carry the heavy stuff." By 1:15 p.m., a college professor reaches out asking to feature Darnell on a panel titled Everyday Resilience. He declines. Instead, he sends a message. Feature the grandmother. She lost her home and never asked for anything. She's the story. At 2:00 p.m., Aaron draws a picture in art class, a figure pulling people from a house on fire. He writes one sentence underneath. He remembered us when the world forgot. His teacher hangs it on the hallway wall. At 3:30 p.m., Darnell returns to the house one last time. Not to repair. Everything's done. Not to be thanked. He's said his goodbyes. He just walks by, checks that the gate swings without sticking, and that the porch light still works. It does. At 4:00 p.m., he leaves a toolbox on the steps with a note. In case something breaks, but I don't think it will. Thursday arrives without a headline. No new videos, no official statements. The story has slowed. Not disappeared, but settled into something steadier. Riverbend breathes differently now. Slower, lighter. At 7:30 a.m., Darnell opens the shop alone. Elijah is out with his daughter for a dentist appointment, so the keys jingle solo. The floor smells like oil and old coffee, and Darnell wouldn't have it any other way. He lifts the garage door, lets in the morning air, and gets to work. No news crews outside, no curious faces at the windows, just the sound of a socket wrench clicking in rhythm with an old blues track playing low on the radio. At 8:15 a.m., a delivery driver knocks with a clipboard and a package. You Darnell? Depends. The driver smiles. Got something for you, no return address. Inside the package is a framed charcoal sketch of the rebuilt house, every board, every window, drawn with meticulous care. At the bottom corner, the initials AJ are scribbled in small print. Darnell stares at it for a long moment, then hangs it in the corner of the shop above the tool wall. By 9:30 a.m., Marcus walks in carrying 2 coffees. He doesn't ask about the drawing. He just sets 1 cup down and slides a folder across the counter. What's this? Letters, Marcus says. From the students at Lincoln High. Apparently, your story got folded into their writing unit. Darnell opens the folder. Inside, a dozen handwritten letters on ruled notebook paper. Some sloppy, some with drawings in the margins. All sincere. You make me believe we can fix things. I want to be like you, but I'm scared. Thank you for being brave first. I didn't know grown-ups could cry until my dad watched your video. Darnell sets the folder aside. He doesn't read them all now. He'll read them one by one, later, when the shop is quiet. At 11:20 a.m., a familiar face steps through the door. It's the grandmother. Darnell raises an eyebrow. Something break already? She shakes her head. Nothing broke, just wanted to say something before it all moves on. He sets down the wrench. She continues, voice soft. People will forget. Not on purpose. Life just fills back in. But we won't. Not my grandbabies, not me. Darnell nods. You don't have to say thank you again. I'm not, she says. I'm saying don't disappear. Not all the way. The world needs reminders. He chuckles. I fix mufflers. That's reminder enough. She smiles, hands him a folded note, and leaves. He doesn't open it right away. At 12:45 p.m., the mayor's office releases a statement confirming that Officer Halton has officially resigned. No pension, no reassignment. The statement is brief, clinical, but it spreads fast. In most places, it would have been front-page news. Here, it's just one more step forward. Darnell hears the announcement on the radio between songs. He doesn't react, doesn't speak, just changes the oil on a Chevy and moves to the next job. At 2:00 p.m., a teenager walks in. It's Aaron. I brought your toolbox back, he says, holding the one Darnell left on their porch days ago. You keep it, Darnell says. Might come in handy. Aaron grins. We already fixed the squeaky door. Then you're ahead of me. They shake hands, firm and quick. No cameras, no crowd, just the 2 of them, and the quiet. At 4:15 p.m., Darnell finally reads the note from the grandmother. One sentence. When people ask me who saved us, I say it wasn't one man. It was a moment, and he chose to stay in it. He folds the paper, puts it in the glove box of his truck, and drives home under a sky that finally looks like it might stay clear. Friday begins like most others now, without fire, without sirens, without interruption. It feels like a return to routine, but there's a subtle shift under the surface. A new kind of normal, rebuilt like the house on Riverbend. Not flashy, not perfect, but sturdier than before. At 7 o'clock a.m., Darnell is already sweeping the shop floor. It's the kind of task no one asks him to do, but he does it anyway. Habit, care, discipline. The broom swipes echo through the quiet garage, soft and rhythmic. The shop radio is off today. Too many announcements, too much praise. Today he wants silence. At 8:10 a.m., Elijah returns from his day off. He walks in holding a greasy bag of breakfast sandwiches and tosses one onto Darnell's workbench. "Your fan mail came," he jokes, handing over another envelope. "You're gonna need your own mailbox soon." Darnell smirks. He doesn't open it. Not yet. At 9:02 a.m., Marcus arrives with a printout of an editorial. He slaps it down on the counter. "You've been compared to a firefighter, a teacher, and a civil rights icon in 3 paragraphs." Darnell eyes it but doesn't reach for it. "I just fixed a roof and told the truth," he says. Marcus nods. "Yeah, that's the part they can't define." At 10:15 a.m., the school counselor from Lincoln High calls. She asks if Darnell would consider visiting during their career week. "We're not asking you to inspire them," she says. "They're already inspired. We just want them to know you're real." He doesn't give an answer right away. Just says, "I'll think about it." At 11:30 a.m., a local artist drops by. She's painted a mural just off Main Street, a faceless figure carrying a child through smoke, framed by a phrase that reads, "The world changed because one person didn't look away." She asks Darnell to sign the bottom corner. He doesn't. Instead, he writes, "This belongs to everyone who didn't turn back." At 12:50 p.m., Darnell drives past the house he helped rebuild. The porch has a new swing now. The flowers planted by volunteers are blooming, small but bright. Aaron is tossing a basketball in the driveway. His sister draws with chalk on the sidewalk. They wave. Darnell honks once, keeps going. He doesn't need to stop anymore, nothing's broken. At 2 p.m., a news anchor reaches out through Marcus, asking for an interview. National spotlight, primetime slot. Marcus offers to decline on his behalf, but Darnell surprises him. "Tell them I'll do it," he says. "If I can bring the family with me." Marcus smiles. "Now that's how you write the ending." "No," Darnell says. "That's how you make sure it isn't one." At 3:45 p.m., he opens the envelope Elijah gave him that morning. Inside is a handwritten note from someone in the neighborhood. "You didn't change the world, but you changed the block. That's harder." Darnell pins it to the corkboard near the time clock. At 4:30 p.m., as the sky begins to dim, a teenager rides by on a bike, skidding to a stop near the shop door. "You're the guy, right?" he asks, breathless. "The one who ran in?" Darnell looks up from under the hood of a car. "That's what they say." The boy nods. "I want to be like that." "Then start now," Darnell says. "Help where you can. Watch closely. Speak when others don't." The boy doesn't fully understand, but he nods anyway. It's a beginning. And Darnell knows. Beginnings are the most fragile part, but they're also the most powerful. Saturday arrives without noise. No door knocks, no interviews, no new reports. It's as if the world finally takes a breath. But Darnell doesn't trust quiet for quiet's sake. He knows it can mean peace or forgetfulness, sometimes both. At 7:30 a.m., he opens the garage again. The floor smells like rubber and steel. The sun casts a long beam across the hood of a rusted Toyota. It needs more than repairs. So does most of what comes through the shop. That's why he likes it. Machines don't lie. At 8:00 a.m., Elijah walks in holding 2 cups of coffee and a newspaper folded under his arm. "They moved your story to page 9, he says. "Guess we're back to sports and weather." Darnell shrugs. "Good. You're not mad?" "If I did this to stay in the news, I did it wrong." Elijah hands him the coffee. "Still, kinda wild how fast the world moves on." "It always has," Darnell says. "Doesn't mean we should." At 9:15 a.m., Marcus stops by, not with letters or press clippings, but a duffel bag full of donated uniforms for a youth sports league. "They need volunteers," he says. "Referees, coaches, mentors." Darnell raises an eyebrow. "You just volunteering me?" Marcus grins. "Not yet, but you're predictable." By 10:00 a.m., they load the boxes into the truck. Marcus drives. Darnell rides passenger. They drop off the gear at a small gymnasium on the west side. Inside, kids run drills while 2 exhausted coaches try to keep order. One recognizes Darnell and walks over. "We still talk about you here," the man says. "You showed him what being brave really means." Darnell shakes his head. Show 'em how to be ready. Being brave only counts when no one else steps in. The coach nods. Still, thanks. By 11:30 a.m., Darnell is back in the shop. He finishes an oil change and lines up the used filters for disposal. No fanfare, no cameras, and yet his phone buzzes with a message from the oversight board. Initial reforms drafted. You'll be the first to see them before we publish. He stares at the screen for a long moment, then replies, "Let the families see them first. They're the ones who lived through it." At 12:45 p.m., a small knock sounds at the shop door. It's Aaron, holding a shoebox. "What's that?" Darnell asks. "School project," the boy says. "We had to build something that represents who we want to be." He opens the box. Inside, a tiny cardboard house, hand-painted in red and gray, with a figure standing next to it. The figure is cut from paper, its arms reaching toward the front steps. Aaron says, "It's you, the day you didn't leave." Darnell doesn't speak. He closes the box gently and says, "You're already ahead of me." At 2:30 p.m., the wind picks up. Leaves scatter across the sidewalk. Darnell sits outside the shop with Marcus, both sipping water, both watching the street like it might speak. "You think people will forget?" Marcus asks. "They're supposed to," Darnell answers. "The story's not about staying in their memory, it's about changing what happens next time." Marcus nods. "And if there isn't a next time?" Darnell looks up. "Then we did it right." At 4 p.m., the mail arrives. One envelope, no return address. Inside, a photo. The mural downtown, the one Darnell refused to sign, now has dozens of signatures scrawled around its base. Students, teachers, passers-by, and one message written in black ink across the bottom corner. "We're watching now, and we're not stopping." He tucks the photo into the pocket of his jacket. He doesn't say a word, but the corner of his mouth lifts just a little. Sunday morning brings with it a quiet most people overlook. No traffic, no rush, just wind brushing trees and birds claiming corners of rooftops. For Darnell, it's the best kind of silence. Not the aftermath of chaos, but the calm built from intention. He arrives at the shop early, not to work on cars, but to fix a shelf in the break room. The screws have been loose for weeks. He never had time before. Now, there's no excuse. By 7:15 a.m., he's on one knee with a screwdriver, tightening bolts, humming low to himself. Nothing profound, nothing heroic. But that's the point. At 8 a.m., Elijah walks in with a breakfast burrito and a newspaper folded under his arm. He tosses both on the counter and sits. "They printed an op-ed today," he says. "Some columnist saying the city overreacted with the new oversight board." Darnell doesn't flinch. "They're already afraid of losing comfort," he says. "That means it's working." At 9 a.m., Marcus sends a message. "The family got invited to speak at the state council. They want you to come too." Darnell replies simply, "Let them shine. They earned it." Then he puts his phone away. Outside, across the street, a mother and her young daughter sit on the bus stop bench. The girl fidgets, drops a stuffed bear, and the mother gently hands it back without a word. Darnell watches, not out of curiosity, but because these are the moments people forget to protect. At 10:30 a.m., a delivery driver knocks with a small crate. Inside, 5 t-shirts, all bearing the same printed message. Change doesn't ask for permission. There's no invoice, no note, just a return address from a local print shop. And one signature, A.J. Aaron. Darnell folds the shirts neatly and places them on the counter. He keeps one for himself, sets the others aside. He's already thinking of who might need them more. At 11:12 a.m., the grandmother calls. Her voice is tired but warm. "They asked me what it felt like," she says. "Being saved like that. I didn't know how to answer." Darnell waits. She continues. "So I told them. It didn't feel like being saved. It felt like being seen. For the first time." He closes his eyes for a moment, then says, "That's better than anything I could have told them." At 12:15 p.m., Darnell walks past the mural downtown. The crowd is gone, but the wall is fuller now. Dozens of new signatures, drawings, even handprints. Some messages are clumsy, some spelled wrong. All real. He finds one near the bottom. A child's scrawl in green crayon. "Because you didn't run away, I won't either." He stands in front of it for a long time, then walks on. At 1:30 p.m., Marcus finds him sitting on a park bench, watching kids race their bikes down cracked sidewalks. One of them almost falls, rights himself, keeps going. "You look tired," Marcus says. I'm not, Darnell replies. Just still. Marcus sits beside him. You think we did enough? He asks. Darnell watches as a mother cheers her son on from the grass. I think we did what mattered, he says. And now it's their turn. Monday starts with sun instead of rain. A rare sight lately in Riverbend, but the light feels earned, like it's showing up out of respect. At 7:00 a.m., Darnell arrives at the shop, not in his usual hoodie, but in a simple collared shirt. He doesn't say why. Elijah doesn't ask, but Marcus knows. Today the family speaks at the state council. Darnell isn't going. He said all he needed to weeks ago. In actions, not words. At 8:15 a.m., he helps a customer replace a faulty radiator cap. She doesn't recognize him, doesn't mention the mural or the council or the fire, just thanks him, pays in cash, and drives away with a nod. Darnell stands by the curb for a moment afterward, watching her taillights fade. Sometimes, peace looks like not being recognized. At 9:45 a.m., his phone buzzes. A message from Marcus. They're on, streams live, it's packed. Darnell doesn't open the link. Instead, he wipes grease from his hands and returns to the shop bay, where a teenager waits with a dented bicycle wheel. I hit a pothole, the boy explains. Bent the rim. Darnell nods. Let's see what we can do. At 10:30 a.m., inside the state capitol building, the grandmother steps to the podium. Her voice is steady, clear. She speaks not just of the fire, but of what came after, of trust restored, of courage passed down, of systems that hurt and the people who refuse to let silence win. Darnell doesn't hear it live, but he feels it. At 11:00 a.m., he finishes straightening the bike wheel. The teenager grins, hopping on to test it. Feels brand new, he shouts. It's not, Darnell says. It's just cared for. At 12:10 p.m., a teacher from Lincoln High walks into the shop. She holds a thick envelope. These are from the kids, she says. They know you don't like attention, so maybe just open them when it's quiet. She leaves without staying for a reply. Darnell places the envelope in the drawer under the register, beside the grandmother's note and Aaron's drawing. At 1:00 p.m., the Oversight Board releases its first reform draft for public review. It includes mandatory community response audits, protections for whistleblowers, and a Darnell clause, a requirement that all recorded footage in use-of-force incidents be reviewed by an independent civilian before disciplinary decisions are made. Marcus calls him. You're in the fine print now, he says. Darnell chuckles. Just don't let them mess up the spelling. At 2:15 p.m., he closes the shop early, not for an emergency, not for rest, just because it's enough for one day. He walks through the neighborhood, past the house, past the mural, past the bus stop where he once stood invisible. Now kids wave, adults nod. A few just smile. No one stops him. And he doesn't stop walking. At 3:30 p.m., Darnell reaches the small community garden behind the rec center. He kneels, checks the soil, waters the green shoots that started from donated seeds. Someone's left a sign beside one of the rows. Growth doesn't need applause, just space. He adjusts it gently, then sits back on his heels. The sun feels warm. He lets it be. Tuesday morning begins with a soft breeze and the steady hum of life in motion. In Riverbend, the tension that once sat thick in the air has thinned, replaced by a quiet readiness, the kind that comes after people stop waiting to be rescued and start building for themselves. At 7:00 a.m., Darnell arrives at the shop. He doesn't unlock the doors right away. Instead, he stands on the curb, sipping coffee, watching the sunrise crawl across the mural on Main Street. The words are still there. The world changed because one person didn't look away. More names have been added since. He doesn't recognize most of them. That's a good thing. By 7:45 a.m., Elijah joins him. They nod at each other without words. They've done this enough times now that language feels optional. At 8:30 a.m., Marcus walks in carrying a manila folder. Got something weird, he says. Oversight Board released an open comment form. Guess how many people filled it out in the first 24 hours? Darnell shrugs. 100? 7,000. He sets the folder down. Most of them mention you. Darnell doesn't open it. He already knows what it says. At 9:15 a.m., a community college professor sends an email inviting Darnell to speak on sustained local activism. He deletes it without reading the full subject line. Instead, he gets under the hood of a Chevy with a rattling belt and loses himself in the familiar rhythm of bolts and pulleys. At 10:30 a.m., Aaron walks in carrying a stack of flyers. "Neighborhood cleanup this Saturday," he says. "Can you come?" Darnell wipes grease from his hands, studies the boy for a moment. "You organizing this?" Aaron nods. "Then I'll be there," Darnell says. "But only if you boss me around." Aaron laughs. "Deal." At 11:50 a.m., a group of 3 teens rides by on bikes. One of them shouts, "That's the guy!" The others glance at Darnell, unsure, then wave. He doesn't wave back, just lifts a wrench and nods. That's enough. At 12:30 p.m., a package arrives. No return address. Inside, a bound booklet titled, "The Riverbend Case, a Civil Study." It's a draft curriculum, designed for high schools. Real names, real timelines, reflection questions, essays. In the margin of page 1, handwritten in pen, "This isn't about blame, it's about choosing to see." Darnell stares at it for a long time, then places it in the drawer with the rest. The letter from the grandmother, the mural photo, Aaron's drawing. The drawer is full now. At 2 p.m., he steps outside and sees a girl chalking something on the sidewalk in front of the shop. He walks over. She looks up nervously. "Is this okay?" she asks. Darnell looks down. She's written in bold, uneven letters. "Here stood someone who made it safer to stand." He nods. "It's more than okay." She smiles, picks up her chalk, and runs off. At 3:30 p.m., Marcus walks in again. "You know the state council added a clause about civilian recordings? Protected status. Can't be seized without consent anymore." Darnell blinks. "They passed that?" "Unanimously." He nods once, then returns to cleaning the bay floor. Same push broom, same back-and-forth motion. No cameras, no reporters. Just the quiet sound of change that doesn't need to be loud. At 5 p.m., as the sun dips low behind the rooftops, he locks the shop and walks home with his hands in his pockets. The mural catches the last of the light. He doesn't stop, but he looks up. And for the first time in a while, he smiles before the streetlights flicker on. It's Saturday now, and the air smells like cut grass and dust, the kind that lingers when too many people gather in one space to fix what no one else will. By 8 a.m., the neighborhood cleanup has already begun. Folding tables line the sidewalks. Cardboard signs with tools, paint, and water written in Sharpie flap in the breeze. Kids run around with trash bags twice their size. Elders sit on plastic chairs offering directions, coffee, and stories. And in the middle of it all stands Aaron, clipboard in hand, shouting assignments like a coach calling plays. Darnell watches from a distance at first, arms crossed, amused. At 8:20 a.m., Aaron spots him. "You're late," he calls out. Darnell walks over. "Had to tie my shoes slow so you'd feel like the boss." Aaron hands him a paint roller. "Then start with the fence line." Darnell grins and gets to work. By 9:30 a.m., there are over 60 people on the block, more than anyone expected. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years now pass each other brushes, joke about peeling paint, and trade memories between strokes. Darnell moves along the fence, rolling green paint in long, steady lines. A teenager he doesn't recognize joins him. "My mom says you're the reason our block's still standing," the boy says. Darnell doesn't look up. "Your mom's the reason you're standing, don't forget that." At 10:45 a.m., Marcus arrives late, carrying sandwiches and bottled water. "I brought peace offerings," he jokes. Aaron raises an eyebrow. Peace was never the issue, punctuality is. Marcus mock salutes and starts handing out food. At 11:15 a.m., a group of local volunteers sets up a table with printed flyers titled, "Know Your Rights, Community Edition." Darnell watches as people take extras, not just for themselves, but for others who couldn't come. At noon, the music starts. Someone brings a speaker, and soon old-school soul mixes with kids shouting and dogs barking. The block doesn't feel like a protest or a cleanup anymore. It feels like a living thing, loud, messy, real. Darnell finishes the fence and wipes sweat from his brow. He takes a step back to admire the work. It's uneven in places, a little patchy, but it's done, and it's theirs. At 1 p.m., a city council representative arrives unannounced. She approaches Darnell with a polished smile and says, "I'd love to get a quote from you for our community newsletter." He shakes his head. "Let the kids write it. They're the reason we're here." She hesitates, then nods. "Understood." At 2:30 p.m., a photo is taken, not by the media, but by a grandmother with a disposable camera. She asks Darnell to gather the volunteers. They pose in front of the mural, arms around each other, paint on clothes, dirt under nails. She clicks once. No filters. No retakes. Perfect. By 3 p.m., cleanup winds down. Tools are packed. Leftover sandwiches vanish. Kids begin chasing each other down the now clean sidewalks. Laughter replaces directions. The chalk returns. Aaron sits beside Darnell on the curb, both sipping water, legs stretched. "We did good," Aaron says. "You did better," Darnell replies. Aaron shrugs. "I had help." They sit in silence for a while, watching a group of teens repaint a mailbox with colors too bright to ignore. At 4:15 p.m., the last brush is washed, the final garbage bag tied, and people begin to leave. Not all at once. Slowly. The kind of leaving that says, "We'll be back." Darnell stands. His back aches. His arms are sore, but his chest is light, not proud, not satisfied, ready. Because this doesn't feel like a conclusion. It feels like momentum. Sunday breaks with light streaming across rooftops and windows left cracked open. Riverbend doesn't wake all at once, but slowly, like a neighborhood learning how to breathe again. By 7:15 a.m., Darnell is already walking, not with a destination, just through streets he used to cross without being noticed. Today, doors are open. Sidewalks chalked with color, kids still wearing yesterday's paint-stained shirts. He passes the corner store, nods at the clerk sweeping the front. They don't exchange words. They don't need to. By 8 a.m., he arrives at the mural. No crowd. Just the wall and its colors. A little faded now. Fingerprints and smudges across the base. The message still reads, "The world changed because one person didn't look away. Only now someone's added underneath it." Then others followed. He stands there for a moment, not as a symbol, just as someone who stayed. At 9:10 a.m., the grandmother walks by with a paper bag of groceries. She smiles at Darnell, then motions to the house across the street. "We fixed the porch yesterday," she says. "Didn't even need a toolbox." He smiles. "Guess I'm out of a job." She laughs. "There's always another broken thing." They part ways, and Darnell continues walking. At 10 a.m., the sound of a basketball bounces through the alley. Aaron and a group of teens shoot hoops using a milk crate nailed to a light pole. The game is loose, loud, full of jokes and missed layups. Darnell stands on the edge, watching. "You playing?" Aaron asks. Darnell shakes his head. "Not in these shoes." "Then you're reffing," one of the kids shouts. He stays for 3 full games, calls fouls, hands out water, laughs harder than he has in weeks. By noon they break for shade. Aaron sits beside him. "You think